Hello and welcome to the latest installment of PSG Talking. I'm your host Ed, and on today's show we're looking back at PSG's defeat to Barcelona and looking ahead to next week's rematch. Before we get started, let me remind you to subscribe to this fine show wherever you download your podcast and leave us a review if you can. Also check out PSG Talk Extra Time on Substack for premium content, and of course visit psgtalk.com for all your Paris Saint-Germain news. All right, on today's show, I'm joined by two fantastic guests. Very excited about them. Up first, we have Dan Hilton from the Barcelona podcast. We discuss Barcelona's tactics and how they were able to defeat PSG at the Parc des Princes. We also discuss how they shut down Kylian Mbappé. We discuss Dembele's controversial goal celebration and how confident he is heading into the return leg. Following Dan, we'll have PSG supporter Drew, who goes by Le Chiffre on X and has been on the show before. Drew also recaps the defeat to Barcelona, including how much blame he places on Donnarumma for the loss and what changes he would make for the rematch. We also discuss whether the season has been a success regardless of the result next Tuesday. I want to thank my two guests for coming on to talk PSG. They had some great insight, and I hope you all enjoyed listening to them as well. All right, without further ado, here is Dan Hilton from the Barcelona podcast and Drew. All right, welcome back to the show. We've got Dan Hilton from the Barcelona podcast. And before we get started, Dan, I just have to say your last appearance was so well received on our end. And together, we might be able to finally bridge that gap between PSG and Barcelona supporters. So thank you again for coming back on. How you been? And any reaction from your listeners on that show?
Well, yes, there was a positive reception and people really liked our show. But yeah. I kind of, McCulpe here on the rivalry thing because I did kind of downplay it a little bit. And the PSG fans, and I think the Barcelona fans too, kind of showed out and did remind. But I don't know. Like, I'm not sure if it's like that's a rivalry within itself or Barcelona have not been in this position since 2020. It's been a while. And PSG, obviously, as much as anybody around the club might say that Ligue 1, like I think it was your president that said it, but like, no, the PSG and the Champions League, like that's the white whale. Like that is what PSG supporters want. They want the Champions League. So I think it's fair that both these supporter groups are getting up for a chance to get to the semifinal. But I did kind of downplay, I think, the rivalry a little bit. I think there's something much more to it, even though it feels recent. It's just me, I mean, people can see behind me. I've got like the history of the club and, I've got an old brain about rivalries or whatever. But yet, I think the TV and internet and, whatever happened last week is your nearest rival. And so I don't want to downplay it. Barcelona, PSG, all right, you got me. It's a little bit of a rivalry.
It's just not on the pitch. It's off the pitch with Neymar and Messi and just there's a lot going on. So and then there was one comment I saw, one Barcelona was like, we don't even think about you. So you have that too. So I almost would rather be a rival than you guys don't think about us at all. So anyway, 3-2. I got to start it with congrats to you guys. I tweeted it out. I'll say it again. PSG outplayed at the park. We don't see it that often, but Barcelona came in and kicked our tail and left with a 3-2 lead. So congrats to you. Were you surprised at how well Barcelona played? And then I thought, like, outside of a few moments in that second half, I thought Barcelona were easily the better team and, dare I say, dominated PSG at times.
It's funny because Barcelona has been so up and down in the first half of the season that this unbeaten streak, they've been really good now for multiple months, for 12 unbeaten games. They've had a plan and they've been solid. But defensively, this might have been the best of the season. This might have been one of the matches of Koundé's career against Mbappé. Not just season, but like of his career. Araujo was unbelievable in that game. Kubarsi is 17, but was still phenomenal. Cancelo you have to defend him as a winger in the Champions League. He's a Champions League caliber left back going forward, but he is not a Champions League caliber defender. Let's say it that way. But Barcelona still had a game plan. And I think Xavi, even though he didn't have it, even though his team took a little bit to get into the game, his game plan, his tactics, like I've been saying all year, like Xavi gets it right from the opening jump. Sometimes my issues with him is that he doesn't respond well. And so my concern even was when Luis Enrique obviously responded rightly and said, hey, I got it wrong with Asensio with a false nine. Here's Barcola. We're going to put Mbappe and Dembele, move them over to the left side together. And then you get to 2 quick goals to start that second half. So I'm saying, all right, Xavi, now it's your turn. What's your answer? And his answer was, okay, PSG had to press for a long time. We broke it down by playing up over the middle through Ter Stegen and Lewandowski, who was winning his duels and had a great day as well, or Rafinha playing in behind, who also had legitimately the match of his career. He scored both his first and second Champions League goals in his career. So an all-timer of a day by Rafinha. So we're going to just play the way that we've been playing since the start in terms of dealing with the PSG press. But with them worn down, here comes Pedri. And then Pedri did kind of flip that game on its head. Christensen comes in late. PSG's back line is too short. They get the third goal, and that's kind of how they won. So it's this funny thing where I actually kind of disagree with you that PSG was played off the field. I think Barcelona got it exactly right. Things went their way. And I think Luis Enrique at halftime had the right idea. But as it goes in Champions League football, one moment, one bit of luck, 1 second is all it takes. And I think Barcelona had 1 extra second on a set piece like we had talked about that would be a concern, and they wind up getting in the winner.
And I got to say, when you saw Luis Enrique's starting lineup and you saw Asensio, who you'll be familiar with from his time at Real Madrid, you saw Marquinhos at right back. Were you sort of like the Ronaldinho meme at AC Milan where he's like in the pregame licking his lips? Like, were you just like, oh yeah, we got this. We're just going to kick them right in the teeth. We're going to go route one football right through their midfield, and we got this. When you saw that starting lineup, what were you thinking?
Wait, where did Asensio come from? What team?
Was it Real Madrid?
I just had to, you have to, as a Barcelona fan, you have to.
We are no fans of them either, yeah.
So, no, it's not that I was excited about that, because that structurally, Sergio Roberto is still Sergio Roberto. He'd been in form, and I thought he should have started. And I think there were Barcelona fans who were a bit frustrated with him because Vitinha did completely shake him out of his boots twice in that game, and it could have been a lot worse. But the reason it was surprising to me was that Asensio, what wasn't working is that when he would drop it in the midfield, Araujo and Kubarsi, the two center backs, were not dropping or were not pushing forward with him. As reactive as Kubarsi is, he kind of stayed on his line because he would either move over to help Cancelo with Dembele, or De Jong would be in position. That meant Kubarsi had to track whether Vitinho or Asensio was the running through. You had to keep an eye on him, which he did, or Araujo was just kind of playing free safety back there for the football fans or the American football fans, just playing free safety back there and sliding over to help Koundé with Mbappé. So I was surprised that a target 9 wasn't starting, but I also figured that PSG was going to overload the midfield in that space. And, because it should have been a numerical disadvantage for Barcelona, because in theory you have Vitinha and Kang-In and Asensio in a small triangle around Sergio Roberto. On paper, that sounds like PSG should absolutely be dominating that numerical advantage to get Mbappe and Dembele in space. And it just didn't happen. So, I don't think I was licking my lips, because there was definitely a way forward. And especially in that first 15 minutes when I thought PSG was on the front foot, if they get an early goal there through some kind of, even deflection, right? Dembele, one of those long shots. I think it was, who had the long, I think Vitinha had one early, a long shot.
He's always good for at least one.
Yeah, then Dembele had one. So if one of those two long shots goes in off the deflection, it's an entirely different game.
It's a good point. And I mean, just from a PSG side, I mean, everyone saw Asensio and we're like, what? He played 90 minutes against Clermont Foot the previous match, but that was a match where we really rotated our squad. So him playing, you're thinking, okay, there's no way he's going to play against Barcelona. 25 minutes against Marseille. I'm just looking here against Stade Rennais in the semifinal of the Coupe de France. He played 14 minutes. So again, this isn't a guy that's been really showing that he's been playing and building momentum to this match. He had a muscle injury in early to mid-March. So it's like injury situation this season. Hasn't played a lot of minutes. And then Luis Enrique's like, sure, yeah, let's throw him out there. Kylian Mbappé, let's talk about him. We recorded for your show before this one, and you really dissected what Barcelona did to keep him quiet. Could you share it with our audience and what you saw from your perspective of how they kept Mbappé to 3 total shots?
Xavi thankfully did what I would hope he would do, and that is trust Koundé in a 1v1. Koundé has been in the form of his life right now, and that is what Barcelona were going to need. If they were going to get the result, they were going to need Koundé to have the defensive performance of his life, and he did. He got nutmegged and Araujo was able to clean up at that one moment by Nuno Mendes when Koundé was whatever beat, but then he didn't foul, which was the important thing too. And he had that late moment with Vitinho that could have gone either way. But I think for Koundé, why it was so good is that he did not allow Mbappe to cross him. He consistently forced him to the the end line, and he did not let Mbappe come inside. And when he did come inside, he kept his body goal side of Mbappe seemingly every time. And he did not for a moment did he switch off in that whole game. Not a single moment. And that is what you have to do against Mbappe, because all he does need is a moment. And so I think it was not only a fantastic performance by Koundé, but he also, by having Mbappe have to hold the ball on his left foot, that meant that to get across Koundé, as long as he continued to have Mbappe dribble slow enough, in enough time for Roberto to man mark in Asensio, that meant that Araujo would then be free to slide over for the help. Because there were times when Mbappe would then get to the end line and could have rounded Koundé, but there was Araujo to help him out afterwards. So there was just, the sliding was right, the timing was right. As I said, the Asensio thing kind of did play in, which is why the 2 goals were scored so quickly in the second half, because the minute you put Dembélé on the left, instead of having Lamine Yamal and Nuno Mendes and Koundé and Mbappe be everything on the left, once it became Nuno Mendes and Dembélé and Mbappe then on the left side for PSG, that became an issue, because obviously Mbappe and Ousmane Dembélé are just so difficult in tight spaces, and they're so terrifying within. I mean, even the goal that Dembélé scored was just a phenomenal goal. Like, what a goal! Like, what was his second one of the year?
I was going to say, you'd never know that he's only scored one other one.
Correct. So, I mean, it was a cracker of a goal from out wide, and both teams are trying to pepper the goalkeepers and kind of force a mistake. But, Barcelona, even that first goal was not like, it's a goal that you go, yeah, I guess so. You know what I mean? Like, because, I mean, De Jong gets faked out of his boots, and De Jong also, I think, didn't track Coutinho on the second goal. So not the best by him, but he also was just coming back from injury, was dog tired himself. But yeah, I mean, I think PSG, for them to score 2 goals and Barcelona fans to still be very happy, I think it makes sense because of how potent that PSG attack is. And I think both of these teams in the second leg could lose it because their defenses completely crumble, because that's a possibility. Or both these attacks could just go out and win it. But I think PSG's attack, like I said from the first leg, I was more afraid of them just kind of like going out and winning that game.
And we'll definitely get your prediction before we let you run here. But you mentioned Koundé in the first show. We talked about, could PSG maybe sign him? But with Mbappe going likely to Real Madrid next season, he's probably a player that you want to keep because he fits tactically. You guys were able to keep him quiet on the night there. And if Mbappe does make the move, you're going to have to deal with him at least twice a season. So Koundé might be staying in Barcelona long term. Let me look through my questions here. We talked about this also, and I maybe we could drill down a little bit more, is your players did not seem to be rattled by the atmosphere. Again, you had teenagers out there. And meanwhile, for PSG, we had Marquinhos and Donnarumma, who were really just making mistakes. It led to some goals. So how did Barcelona keep their calm? Is this just part of the Barcelona DNA? Have they been like this all season? What do you credit that to?
I think it was a few factors. One, Lewandowski, king of vibes. He was really good in that game, and his teammates were finding him. His first touch was really good, which has not been at all times this season. And winning 7 of 9 of those duels in the air, I think, emboldened him in a way. I think he did really well against Beraldo. So when you talk about kind of being a prisoner of the moment, that's what I felt like. Beraldo was probably the only player I felt for PSG who was kind of a prisoner of the moment. And on the other side, yes, to Barcelona's credit, Kubarsi is 17, the youngest defender ever to start a quarterfinal in the Champions League, and you would have never known because he has been just so important in between the years more than anything else. Like, his line-breaking pass for that first goal that bypassed the PSG midfield was exceptional. And yes, Lewandowski had a lot of work to do, and Rafinha had a lot of work to do to finish it as well, but just phenomenal from Kubarsi. And then Lamine Yamal as well, 16 years old and taking on Nuno Mendes and fundamentally understanding what he had to do defensively in that game. So they were not rattled. Positionally, they were where they needed to be, a full understanding of what was laid out in front of them. So, yeah, I think Lewandowski kind of having good vibes. And Rafinha is the same way. Like, sometimes he can mentally drift out of a game if he has to run against or dribble against a low block, because that's not really his style, not his game, and he can struggle. But the fact that Barcelona were willing to play Route 1 football, and that Ter Stegen was finding those passes in behind. And I said Lewandowski was winning his duels at midfield, so then Rafinha was able to kind of play in behind. That was just allowing them to express themselves. And a happy Barcelona, or let's say players who are kind of finding their game for Barcelona, are happy Barcelona players. And I think that kind of helped them find the game And it did take him a bit of time. As I said, till the 15th, 20th, in my notes, I have the 23rd minute. It really wasn't until the 23rd minute where I was like, okay, Barcelona have settled in. They found this game, and now this is kind of anybody's game. And they've kind of survived to get it to 0-0.
Yeah, it shocked me. I thought for sure the atmosphere in PSG, I didn't think Barcelona played that well. And so credit to them. Donnarumma is, I would say, probably public enemy number one for PSG supporters. If we look at him, you talked about the Kubarsi cross, and it was Donnarumma who came out to try to clear that and kind of block it, just totally whiffed on it. I thought the third goal, while I probably blame Marquinhos a little bit more, at 6'5", I think Donnarumma certainly should have come out and claimed that cross. Donnarumma is a player we saw at Newcastle. It was a whole team collapse, but he was in goal and didn't really do a whole lot to help. This is a player we saw a couple years ago. Benzema just pushed him off the ball and scored. This is a player this season at AC Milan had Dollarumas thrown at him. He's been through a lot in this competition. He's rattled. He's not good with the ball at his feet. If he does start in goal, which I expect on Tuesday, is Donnarumma, is that a player that you think Xavi and Barcelona are going to target to try to get him to make another mistake, which he's very prone to?
You know what's funny? I actually got some flack on my end because I was a little more defensive of Donnarumma when it was, before, but it was like 2-1. In that first half, I thought both goalkeepers were just fine. Like when it was 0-0, I thought Donnarumma was coming off his line. Well, I mean, it could have been a lot worse even in that first half. He doesn't come out on, what was that, early cross from Lamine Yamal in the first half. That was Rafinha, I think, almost got to it or whatever it was. So I thought Donnarumma was actually fine in that first half. And then even on the third goal, I thought that the corner kick by Gundogan that he put in, it was a perfect ball because it had that backspin on it that lofted. It had enough speed on it that Donnarumma was kind of stuck on his line. So it was too quick for him to come off his line, but he also kind of was stuck to where he was because it was close enough to Christensen where if it found a head, it had the perfect spin on it to just be redirected in behind. So I kind of more credited Barcelona for doing for kind of executing against what is not a tall PSG team. I mean, Araujo, Christensen, Lewandowski, all three of them are taller than every PSG outfield player. So take advantage of that, hopefully, and they did. So I think PSG fans were were rougher on Donnarumma, but also Barcelona fans told me that I had to stop, giving him any benefit of the doubt either. So maybe I'm the exact wrong person to ask. So I think, attack goalkeepers, like, it's not like he's such a disaster that, it's not like a Copa del Rey against a third division goalkeeper who's like a cook in his spare time. Like, I think both teams actually pepper the goalkeepers with long shots because they wanted to create some space and make that dangerous and make those midfielders have to drop in a little bit. So I think the second game is going to be the same thing where I think you're going to see a long shots from both these teams, not because these goalkeepers are prone to errors, but just because tactically you want to create more space for Dembélé and Mbappé for those underlaps. And the way to do that is with long shots.
Well, you mentioned Dembélé there. I guess we should get into if there's any controversy from this game. And there was none from the official. I know some PSG fans were calling for penalties here, and I think maybe 2 of them, but I just don't think there's too much in it. So that wasn't controversial. But what was, at least from a Barcelona perspective, was Dembele's goal celebration. Do you want to talk about that, maybe your personal feelings, and then just the fan base as a whole, how that's being received?
I forgot to talk about it on my own show, but it's I wish I had said it on my show, but I'll say it here because Luis Figo was in attendance. But one, obviously, off of this jump, like the racist responses to Dembélé, both even in Catalan media, like Movistar, they let one of their presenters go because of the comments he made. So the racism is prevalent and disgusting, and all that. I am not surprised that he celebrated because he always never really felt at home with the supporters. Like, he liked Xavi, he loved Barcelona, but it never fit for him. He never felt comfortable with the supporters in Catalonia. There was just some disconnect there. So I'm not surprised that he was totally okay kind of being excited to put down the Barcelona supporters a bit and kind of, it was more about him responding to them than it was about him responding to FC Barcelona, if that makes any sense. Because I think Xavi wanted him to stay. Xavi wanted him to be the main man. Like, Lamine Yamal being a revelation is lucky because Dembélé was supposed to be the huge loss. because of the way that this system was built, kind of around that chaos that he has. But as frustrated as I was by his celebration, and it's kind of a disrespect to his legacy at Barcelona, but it's like, I have a list that I keep of the top 50, and I've now extended it over the years to 75 Barcelona players in history, and he never became close. As many years as he was there, few players have been around that long and kind of been, not on the list. Like he wasn't going to make it. It's not a conversation. He didn't do enough. He wasn't that important of a player. And I think for the younger fans to compare him to Luis Figo is insane. There's so many levels of that. Luis Figo said he was staying, went to Real Madrid. 2, he goes to Real Madrid. Let me say that again. Let me repeat that. 3, he goes on. He agreed to the contract, and then at the last minute, he steps back. And 4, he won the Ballon d'Or as a Real Madrid player for his accomplishments in a Barcelona shirt, and of course with Portugal and stuff. Like he went it because of Portugal, but like he was amazing. He was the important player for Barcelona in a time Barcelona were fine. But I know Dembélé was in function, but like Luis Figo actually was the superstar that you cannot, ignore. So actually, he's literally right behind my head. I'm pointing at the name. It's because that's what he is. He was a superstar for FC Barcelona in a way that Dembélé was a good player, for an attacker, maybe a star, but it's just like for the Barcelona fan, like, oh, throw a pig's head at him. That's outrageous. Like should he have celebrated? No, like it's disappointing. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. You know what I mean?
Don't throw anything at the players, please. Yeah, I guess I look at this from like an American perspective, just American sports. I've never gotten the don't celebrate against your old team type thing. I always feel like it's fair game. It just doesn't bother me that much. If Mbappe scores a goal for Real Madrid against PSG, he's probably not. I know he's not going to celebrate. But if he did, PSG, stop him. Don't let him score. Like that's the way I look at it. If you don't want Dembélé to score, stop him. If you don't want Mbappe to score against you, stop him. Right? That's the way I look at it. And if he does, it's a goal in the Champions League. Celebrate it or whatever it might be. That's sort of my perspective.
Do your listeners want to just nerd out for just 1 second? Do I have just 1 minute to nerd it out? So
let's do it.
So the idea of like, as you said, to the American sports ethos, right? Like there was a long time when most players stayed with their teams. And this idea, like I'm a big NBA fan. So the idea of players kind of being like real free agents, like joining these super teams and going wherever they want, is kind of a new phenomenon. Like the decision with LeBron James kind of shifted that really. Like it was a line of demarcation, shifted that entire culture here in the United States. Because before that, you kind of got, guys were your players and they stay with their teams. And very rarely you'd have trades or whatever. And, Shaq was an example of that. But, your players are your players. And for the world of football, there was 2 big things that changed everything. 1994, the Bosman ruling, because a lot of times players, in South America or other places, you were limited to the number of non-EU players that could play for you. And different countries throughout those earlier years also changed whether or not players even from other EU countries fell underneath that limit. So like for Barcelona, for example, like Koeman, they had to decide with that dream team with Johan Cruyff between Romario, Stoichkov, Koeman, and Laudrup, which is why Laudrup winds up going to Real Madrid and is not seen the same way Luis Figo is, because Laudrup wasn't playing sometimes when clearly Michael Laudrup was like a Ballon d'Or, legacy, you know what I mean? What like could have won a Ballon d'Or, like was amazing. So that was one of the times that kind of changed things. Bosman ruling just meant that, okay, now you can have more players from all over the place and players are a little more willing to leave in those places with the non-EU rules. And then part 2 of that was Chelsea in, 2001, 2002, when Abramovich comes in and kind of does blow up the transfer market, right? To a way where it used to just be teams in your own league, you get a little bit of discount on that. But, your players, you always had the best chance of keeping your own players. And that has not been the case since 2002. And Chelsea kind of blew it all up. And then obviously, I'm not in a safe place with PSG, but like Man City and PSG and the money that they have to spend, obviously, Neymar to PSG changed.
Who would have thought we would have paid 220 million? Yeah, I mean, Barcelona thought they set that number high enough, no one would ever touch it.
Right. I mean, but that is why Barcelona and Real Madrid, because Spain has, once you pay the release clause, there's no getting back. That's why now Real Madrid and Barcelona and Atletico Madrid, it's usually $1 billion. Like Lamine Yamal's release clause is, I think, $1 billion. He's 16. Like, or that's like their first professional contract. They're signed. It's $1 billion. Antoine Griezmann was $1 billion, and then Barcelona were like, well, we'd love it if somebody paid his release. Oh wait, they can't, right? So like, I mean, and that's why these Spanish teams have to do that. I mean, even like Zubamendi for Real Sociedad, he like redid his contract so that he upped his release clause so that if Arsenal or Bayern Munich or whoever came calling, or Barcelona hopefully, but if anybody came calling, then he would be able to help the club recover from that. And you're not just like stripped for your parts like we've seen so many, like AS Monaco, by the way, back in 2017.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for indulging me. I mean, I like, for the people who don't listen to Barcelona or care about that, my show is not just this. It's me nerding out sometimes too. Like that's what we do over there.
Well, you make good points. It's just funny. Like LeBron James, when he went to Cleveland, or now he's in Miami, when he goes back to Cleveland, he plays. Does he like after every shot? Does he like put his head down like, oh, I didn't mean to make that? It's just silly from basketball perspective or baseball. Yeah. If you hit a home run against your former team, do you not run the bases? Oh, I'm sorry. Like I just find it a little silly. If a former player scores against you, let them celebrate. If you don't like it, stop them. That's how I see it. All right, I got two more questions for you, Dan. Talking about just for this return leg on Tuesday, PSG, they're getting Hakimi back. He's from suspension. I can't imagine Luis Enrique is not going to start Zaire-Emery. Should be a little healthier. I can't imagine he'll make that mistake twice. Bradley Barcola should be a little bit healthier. I think he is in contention for starting. So we've got some players coming back, only down a goal. So you're feeling a little bit optimistic. Barcelona has some issues. Sergio Roberto is suspended. You've got Christensen is suspended. You probably rotate your squad on Saturday. I think the match is against Cadiz. So maybe you have that game to play with before Tuesday. So just what is your level of concern, optimism regarding a PSG comeback on Tuesday?
Well, I think Mbappe and Dembélé are scary enough that obviously they could put up 2, 3 goals or 4 goals. Like that's totally possible. And I think the real concern, as you mentioned, is in that midfield, for better or worse in an odd way, because on paper, it'll be De Jong and Pedri and Gundogan. That's the trio for Barcelona, which those three are objectively better individual players probably than Christensen and Roberto. Well, definitely Roberto, but definitely Roberto, but possibly Christensen too. But functionally, that's the worry that Roberto, even though he isn't like a natural defensive midfielder, he still, as we talked about, against that false nine in Asensio, did occupy the space. And playing in that double pivot with the other defensive midfielder allows De Jong to shade over to the left to deal with Dembélé and to get forward when necessary and to plug those spaces a little bit, and make those choices and make those proper decisions. So without a proper defensive midfielder to shield that back line, I would be concerned not only if PSG were now moving with the false nine, whoever that may be. Let's say Kang-In Lee plays at a false nine and Zaire-Emery comes in as the midfielder. But even if they started a target striker, a number 9, then it just numerically, it's going to get worrying and concerning those late runs from the midfielders as well. Like Vitinha will be dangerous again. If Kang-In Lee again starts and you start Zaire-Emery as the third and rotate Ruiz, like whatever it may be, that De Jong, Pedri, Gundogan, as exciting as it might be moving forward, that trio also earlier in the season, they don't necessarily control games. So you'd think that, okay, that's our midfield. We can it becomes a war of attrition. But with the talent and speed of PSG, that's not going to work. Like there's going to come moments when they're going to be under attack. And I'm a bit worried about the defensive shape through the middle for Barcelona. But again, on paper, De Jong, Pedri, and Gundogan should be the three that you do trust. So the only worry is that if Barcelona, let's say they go down 2-1 or 3-1, now I've got a big concern because Barcelona is better when Gundogan's farther forward, but I think it's going to be Pedri farther forward and Gundogan and De Jong kind of in the double pivot, which again, you lose what has made Barcelona so dangerous with Gundogan in this 12-game unbeaten streak. Because the big thing that happened there was Christensen came in as a defensive midfielder. And since that time, Barcelona has just functionally worked so much better. So you're kind of taking away one of your best players. And honestly, I'll say it here, hot take. I should have said this on my show, but Gundogan should be a representative for the Ballon d'Or this season. Like especially if Barcelona get into the semifinals, like he has been awesome. Like he has the most goal contributions of any year in his career. He's been functionally there every game for Barcelona. And yeah, he's been amazing. So to have him play deeper, you get rid of some of the best things he does. So that would be my one and really only concern for Barcelona. And then part 2 of that is, just replicating what they did defensively. Because as I said, they had maybe their best defensive game of especially first half. That was their best defensive first half. 6 years. I was looking back at my own notes.
Incredible.
6 years.
Yeah, incredible defensive performance, and PSG will have to take advantage of the different things that Barcelona have to do in the midfield. I'm going to ask you your prediction But attached to that, do you think Barcelona is their best strategy going to be come out of the gate with that home crowd, root one football as we talked about, and just try to smack PSG and get another goal and put this thing away? Or do you think it's best for them to sit back and maybe hit on the counter? So talk about maybe what you think that strategy is going to be there, and then give me your prediction for this match.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first 15 minutes, to your point, are so crucial. Because if Barcelona, the way that they kind of did, I know they struggled out of the gate and it took them 20-some minutes to really get comfortable in the game. But if they're able to keep it 0-0 in that same manner, then I have a lot more confidence in Barcelona. But if PSG come out getting ready to go and they're the ones who attack first, I wouldn't say that it's going to be root one football again, but I think Lewandowski winning those aerial duels and trying to play in behind Rafinha again is going to be essential. I would hope that Lamine Yamal is better in this contest. He had one of his worst games. That's just how good he's been, by the way, at 16. It's not a knock on him. He was fine. He wasn't amazing. Defensively, he was good, but he was fine. But if he is better as well and requires and pins Nuno Mendes back a little bit farther, I think that could give Barcelona a big advantage. So I would really hope that Lamine Yamal, of any player, I would hope that he starts on the front foot quickly. And I would also say that, I think you'll know within the first 5-10 minutes if Mbappe kind of is in the game right away, or if it takes them a little bit to find it. And then my prediction, I said it on my show, I'll repeat it here. I think it's going to be 2-2 because I do think that obviously PSG are going to score, but I have a bit of confidence that Barcelona are playing well right now and they're finding ways to score goals in all the different ways. So, again, I'm a Barcelona fan. So at some times, I did pick them to lose 2-1. So I do have to back my team every now and again. So I'm going to do that. And I do think this one finishes 2-2.
And I think that's fair. It'd be a goal fest. Definitely would look forward to that. Number one, my prediction for this match is just I'm going to be looking through my hands. I just don't want to watch this match. I hate these moments, but I also love them, as weird as that sounds. I said this on your show. My prediction is I think it's going to be the ultimate torture match for PSG supporters. I think we'll get a goal, and it'll be 1-0 after full time, and then I think it's going to penalties, and we'll see what happens there. I'll again, because I'm a PSG fan, I think we'll win on penalties, but I think this is just going to be a brutal, brutal match for PSG supporters to watch. So, Dan, thank you so much for coming on and helping us recap what happened just a few days ago. And it's a quick turnaround. Tuesday we'll be here before we know it. I hope you're able to have a nice, relaxing weekend. I don't know if you're a golf fan, maybe watch some of the golf and relax, let the nerves, because Tuesday's coming and it is going to be high octane. It should be a lot of fun. So thanks again for coming on. And we'll have to do this again real soon.
Yeah, maybe next year.
All right. Take care. All right. Welcome back to the show. We have Drew. Thanks again for coming on. How are things on your end?
Things are doing well. Lovely Saturday afternoon here in Dallas. Enjoying the springtime weather. Cannot complain. Each day's a blessing.
Absolutely. And spring is here, and PSG are still in the Champions League. So who can't be excited about that? And we've got a lot to talk about. We've got to talk about the match last Wednesday. We've got to look ahead to Tuesday's match against Barcelona. Our Champions League lives are on the line after PSG lose 3-2 at the Park. That result sure as hell surprised me. I didn't think PSG would lose. I think I predicted 2-1 PSG would win. I certainly didn't think PSG would ship 3 goals to Barcelona. I definitely didn't see that. So, you look at the starting lineup, and that's where I want to begin here. Marco Asensio, I had big problems with that. That was completely unexpected. He's a player starting his first Champions League match for PSG this season. So, and it's not like he's been playing 90 minutes leading up to this match. He was kind of placed sparingly in different matches against Marseille and others. So completely surprised me there. Marquinhos at right back, I didn't think that made a whole lot of sense. And then Warren Zaire-Emery is probably the biggest one. As good as he is at 18 years old, he was left off. We know he was carrying an injury, but so I had issues all over the starting lineup. But let me toss it to you. When you saw the starting lineup for Luis Enrique, what stood out to you? What problems did you have with it?
Yeah, the biggest thing that kind of caught my attention was the attacking line. I think we all felt that Gonzalo Ramos was going to be the given third wheel in the front line, knowing that Bradley Barcola picked up that slight knock in the international break. So that was probably the biggest question mark to me. Asensio really hasn't had a subpar season, but hasn't had the greatest. We do know he picked up a knock, but given, the most recent matches come the turn of the year, he hasn't really been an out-and-out starter. So given that this was the biggest match of the year and seeing that we had a change-up in the attacking line, which is pretty critical in any club that you play with. That attacking line needs to have time to have some gel, some familiarity to themselves. So seeing Asensio come in was surprising to say the least. Then the second given question mark that I felt as well was Zaire-Emery not being in the midfield three. We all know he had a slight knock from the last match, the Clermont match, but we didn't know the severity of it. Was he going to start? Was he not going to start? Maybe can he get the first 60 minutes in and then get taken off if we were, in a comfortable lead? So seeing that Kang-In came in that midfield three, I initially thought that we were going to try to have Fabian and Vitinha in like a double pivot and then kind of have Lee and Asensio 2 places ahead, and then that full front attacking line going at Barcelona center halves with Dembele and Mbappe. So it was very surprising. I initially would have probably put in Ugarte, given that Zaire-Emery wouldn't have been a starter, but I guess Enrique wanted to go a little bit more on the attacking end, maybe have a little bit more creativity with Kang-In kind of being like a false 10, a false 9. Same thing that Asensio could do as well. So seeing that those 2 players can kind of play that similar role of like an attacking midfielder, false 9, it just didn't seem right. It seemed like it was a little unbalanced, and it showed clearly in that first half when Barcelona could just cut through our midfield with ease. So that was a little surprising. I did read some of the same reports that some of the players were surprised that morning coming in that they were going to be starting in certain positions, i.e. Marquinhos and that outside back. We all know Hakimi was suspended, so we knew there was going to be some sort of shift on the back line. But Marquinhos, I can't even recall in recent years of him playing on the outside. We know he played as a defensive midfield under Tuchel years ago. But Marquinhos as an outside back just was not there. So the whole starting 11 just kind of seemed a little questionable to begin with. So what can you do? We just know that changes had to be made, but we didn't see them being as such flops after the first 45.
Yeah, and that report that you're mentioning came out today. So we're recording on Saturday, April 13th. And this is from PSG Report, translated it, but it was from L'Equipe. And it said 2 hours before kickoff against Barcelona on Wednesday, part of the dressing room didn't understand and was very surprised to discover Marco Asensio was going to start his first Champions League game this season, and Warren Zaire-Emery would be on the bench. Before the match, I predicted that Warren Zaire-Emery would not only play, but I thought that maybe he would play in that right back position with Hakimi suspended. I didn't think it would be Marquinhos. It was a surprise move. And in talking to Dan Hilton on the Barcelona podcast, it was almost like Luis Enrique got a look at the tactics and the starting lineup for Barcelona and then adapted his lineup to aid them as much as possible. I mean, we, like you said, we had creative players in midfield, but with the way that Barcelona were going to play, they've got Gundogan, who is a great creative player. They've got Lewandowski, who's an experienced striker. They know how to score goals, and they just came right straight at us and right through our midfield. We saw it in that first goal. So just overall, just a disappointing lineup. And if the players were questioning it going into a match like this, your confidence is a little bit down. You don't feel like you are as well prepared. I think someone asked Luis Enrique after the match, and I can get your thoughts on this. I think they asked him, maybe it was specifically about Warren Zaire-Emery, and he had some kind of comment. I don't have it pulled up, but he essentially said, I'm the one, I watch him every day. I'm in training, yada, yada, and all this other stuff. And I make the decision. Basically saying everyone can question, but I see them and I make the final call. And because it didn't work out, he has to accept the blame. But we saw earlier this season, he didn't play Vitinha after having a man of the match performance in the group stage. In the Champions League this season, he keeps making these head scratching decisions. And so I'll toss it to you if you want to talk about that. Like, why does he feel the need to experiment? And then are you sort of like not on board with giving him an extension? Is there more you want to see from him?
Given that, the 2 matches that you're referring to, probably the Newcastle game away, and then last week's game, and you see the changes, the Newcastle game was a complete head scratcher because at that point in the season, everybody was healthy for the most part, if I could remember correctly. Fabian wasn't as in form as he was now, so I don't think that he wouldn't have been a starter in that game. So given that we went in a 4-4-2 in that formation away at Newcastle, and we had typically been playing in a 4-4-3, I just think that was a more formation change, and I think he wanted to go out and attack because they play a very free-flowing attacking game, where Barcelona, per se, isn't necessarily like that because some of their players are a little bit older. Ilkay Gundogan, Frankie de Jong, these are more technical midfielders. They're not maybe the paciest players. So I felt like he kind of wanted to utilize maybe what he felt was best. Maybe he felt Warren Zaire-Emery was a little underexperienced. I don't believe that whatsoever. But I just feel like maybe after his statement post-match that he felt like he decided to do was right. We all know we're not professional football managers, so you can only critique it from a distance and in hindsight. Just the slight changes. I just feel like I'm still 100% behind him. The things that he's done and the short amount of time he's been in the club has been magnificent. 100% in for the extension. I think he has the correct mentality of a manager that we've always looked for. We've had some good prospects. Tuchel was pretty good as well, but I just feel like at this given point of the transition of the club, I feel like he's the right person. He's technically sound enough to where he can manage any game situation. He's got the respect. He's got the experience. I can't really say that I'm upset for what he did. I'm just confused. It did seem good that, right after halftime, he made the changes that were needed, given that some of our other managers might not have made those changes until maybe the 75th, 80th minute, and it's too late by then. So with Luis Enrique, I'm not too upset. I just feel like there were small elements of the game that we kind of handed to them, not necessarily the personnel changes were the defining factor of the loss last week. Full credit to Barcelona, but I've got my full faith in Enrique to this day right now.
Okay, good to hear. And I think bringing on Bradley Barcola and taking off Asensio right at halftime, it sort of was his admission that, yep, I got it wrong. And maybe he was trying to be the smartest person in the room and say, I'm going to start Asensio. He's familiar with Barcelona from playing at Real Madrid. He's not going to be nervous in this situation on this stage. And so maybe he thought, I'll do something unexpected and try to catch Xavi in Barcelona, because no one would have expected that. But I will say, he leaves Colomwani on the bench. We know that what his transfer fee was. Why did we bring him in? Why did you know what I mean? Why did we pay that if we're not going to play him and go with someone like Asensio in a match like this? It's curious, but Kylian Mbappe. Why don't we transfer to him, because he did not have a great game. We talk about Asensio, but Mbappe did not have a good game. 3 total shots. I'm just looking at his stats here. Successful dribbles, 20%, 1 out of 5, not good enough. He had 2 blocked shots, so he didn't create a ton of chances. I think if you want to give him a little credit, for Dembele's goal, he was able to keep the ball inbounds and was able to eventually it bounced around in the box and landed to Dembele, and he scored a great goal. But just talk about Mbappe. How disappointed were you in this performance? I don't think it's what any of us expected.
Yeah, definitely quiet on the night. Definitely quiet. After the 2 legs against Real Sociedad and his given form right now, I just felt that he was up for it. Not that he's never up for any match, whether it's, a Coupe de France match against a, National 2 team or Barcelona in the quarterfinals. I felt he was quiet. It seemed clear right off the initial whistle that every time Mbappe got the ball, which a lot of teams do this, is they double team him. They double team him right off the bat because they understand that if any player in the world is going to beat a defender 1v1 this day and age, it's going to be him against whoever he's up against. So I think that Barcelona's backline clearly had a strategic plan against him, and they executed it perfectly. Given, we didn't necessarily have the best, game plan coming into the final third in that first half, I just felt like he kind of struggled. And sometimes it's easy to see with him and his mentality. Sometimes if it's not clicking with him, he kind of struggles to be in the game, and he kind of is in the fringes sometimes because he doesn't necessarily track back. So therefore, he's not necessarily in the intense game mode per se in transition, in 50-50 balls, whatever the case may be. So it seems like since he was getting isolated and double teamed every time he had the ball, he was not feeling himself per se. We didn't really try to play, that quick through ball behind Barcelona's back line a lot. We didn't really try to play balls over the top because he's not the biggest player, and we didn't have a central striker, given your point of not playing, Kolo Muani or Gonzalo Ramos in that first half. So that outlet of playing, a central ball to the striker, which Barcelona was executing beautifully, kind of really isolated him. I felt like he just was not feeling himself. And we all know, like, once Kylian gets in that mode, he goes, it's crazy how quickly he can flick a switch. And I guess the only upside of it is that he had such a bad game that, 9 times out of 10, he doesn't necessarily have 2 bad games in a row. So I feel like this could hopefully work to our advantage going back to Spain, that it can motivate him, that it could, spark a fire inside of him to try to really go out with a bang, because essentially this could be his last Champions League match with us. And I don't think he wants to go out that way, given that was the last home game possibly in the Champions League. So I just feel like maybe he, just didn't have his best night. Us being fans and supporters of the club, I've never been a professional athlete. Most of us haven't. So you can't really put yourself in that place to say, like, oh, he should have done better, he should have done worse. We're all human. So, Barcelona had a great execution plan against them. They double teamed him. They isolated him sometimes. Maybe he could have made some better decisions. I know I was watching a recap of the match, and there was a shot that he took outside of the box where I think he could have played in Dembele, but he didn't. So I just think, like, maybe he just got isolated, and when the chances that he tried to take, he just didn't get. So I'm just hoping that, like I said, that, given that he didn't have the best match, that next week on Tuesday, he's going to come out guns a-blazing and score another hat trick in Spain. God knows.
That would be nice. And yeah, I mean, credit to Barcelona's defensive tactics there, and Jules Koundé, who has been in the transfer rumor mill at PSG, are taking a look. I think he's familiar with Mbappé, just being with the France national team. So he would know exactly what was in store going up against Mbappé. And I thought he did a really good job taking him on. And then Araujo as well for Barcelona. What a great defender he is. So they've got some really talented, young, speedy defenders, and they were able to keep Mbappé quiet. But I'm with you. I don't think they'll be able to do that 2 games in a row. And I think as we go to Barcelona, we'll talk about predictions. I think you got to at least pencil PSG in for at least one, and Mbappé certainly could be a goal scorer. Absolutely. I think we got to agree with that. But let's still focus on Wednesday's match. Donnarumma, just a simple question. How much of the 3-2 loss do you place on him?
I would say a strong 60%. I'm really not the one to try to always place blame directly on players. I played football when I was a kid, never played goalkeeper, played in the midfield, played out wide. So I have no idea what a goalkeeper's life is like. But given I've watched professional football for decades now, and you see certain characteristics in certain type of plays around the box, what goalkeepers commonly do. We'll start with the first goal. When Barcelona's on the counterattack, the ball's played in, Donnarumma comes off his line, clears it, but he punches the ball, and he doesn't really punch the ball with authority. He kind of just makes an effort and just kind of hits the ball and doesn't necessarily hit it with a lot of conviction to where it goes kind of another 10 or 15 yards to where he can scramble back to his goal line. Beraldo can kind of come back to, set in place. So I think either you have to come out, clear the ball far out, or come out and clear the ball and grab it. It comes out, clears the ball, hits it, and I think it travels maybe about 5 to 10 feet maybe. And then Barcelona picks it back up, and I forgot exactly what happened, but it was basically a quick snapshot because they recover the ball right away, where he doesn't necessarily take it with authority by clearing the ball or coming out. I think one that's necessarily inexperienced with him playing with Beraldo, because Beraldo has not been with the club for a long time. So I feel like maybe Marquinhos or even Lucas Hernandez would have had maybe a little bit more cohesion, knowing whether to clear the ball themselves or make a play on that ball. But I just feel like that first goal was kind of really on him because he didn't clear it all the way or just recover the ball and get on top of it. Now, the second goal was an absolute abysmal, horrific play by a top-level goalkeeper. I think we talked about this in the Twitter spaces after the match. And it comes down strictly to his inability to place the ball where he wants to place it with his foot. Goalkeepers, their job is to stop the ball with their hands. They're the only players in the game that can touch the ball with their hands legally. But I just feel like he has the inability to place the ball where he wants to place it when he kicks the ball. And it just shows that he clears the ball out, and it basically there's no player, i.e. PSG, in that vicinity. It goes about 10 or 15 yards past Bradley Barcola, and then Barcelona recovers the ball, plays the ball into Pedri, and it's a snapshot goal in. We're level with them 2-2. And it's because he has the inability of control with footwork. If he would have played the ball out of touch, if he would have played the ball to the halfway line, we would have had enough time, I think, to recover. It wouldn't have been a quick 1-2. It's two passes in, and they're in on goal. So I just feel like that goal was 100% on him because you can't have a goalkeeper who has such poor placement in critical matches to do mistakes like that because you're put in a situation that you're not necessarily wanting to be put in. What would you rather have, a goalkeeper that can be a shot stopper and a penalty saver, or a goalkeeper that puts you in these weird awkward situations to, put your defense up against the heels game in and game out? I just feel like we're up in arms right now with supporters in the club who some support him, some don't support him. I'm not the biggest supporter of him. There's just been too many times where he makes mistakes with his footwork, where he could just clear the ball out of touch, clear the ball 50 yards out, and it just gives us time. It just kills time off the clock. And he just seems like he just doesn't have that ability to have the awareness to make smart decisions like that. So that second goal was 100% on him. Try to wrap this up on Donnarumma. The third goal, I think he should have came out. He just stood there. It seems like the first goal he wanted to come out. The second goal, he didn't know what to do. He just kicked the ball just to kick it. And the third goal, he just doesn't come out. Marquinhos, the ball glances over his head while Zaire-Emery gets caught ball watching, but he literally stands there. It reminded me of that Neymar free kick against Neymar against Kevin Trapp of the Remontada. Kevin Trapp just stood there and just watched the ball go in. So like I said, I've never played goalkeeper, but you got to do something. And some of the things that he does end up backfiring. So I would say 60-40, the goals were on him. We can only hope that the stinker that he had last week does not happen again. And maybe we can look to maybe have some competition. Keylor Navas is not a bad player. I think you agree with that, Ed. Keylor Navas is a top-rated goalkeeper. So we can only hope that he learned from his mistakes and he can just, make some safe plays, play the ball out of touch, play the ball to your center half. Yes. Don't play the ball to your defensive midfielder if he's being pressed by the opposition. Just take the smart way out and don't put your defense in tricky situations if you don't have to. I think that's the biggest thing he still needs to learn after 3 years here.
We know Luis Enrique is not a fan. We've seen him on the sideline. I think that one game, I forget who it was against, and Donnarumma kicked it. And it was landed right in front of Luis Enrique. I think he actually may have caught it or something landed by his feet. He's just shaking his head like, what is this guy doing? It's almost like a baseball player that has forgotten how to throw to first base. We've seen that with some players, or even Ben Simmons in the NBA, who have just forgotten how to shoot a basketball. It's at this level, how are you going to be a professional footballer, even if you're a goalkeeper and you can't place a pass where you want it to be? No one's asking you to be Messi, but my goodness, play the right pass or just boot it as far as you can down the pitch and take the pressure off of your defense. It makes no sense. Looking at his stats, he was at 76% accurate passes, 44% accurate long balls. I mean, that's just not good enough. I probably would go a little bit higher, maybe 75% of the blame. Absolutely. That first goal Barcelona scored, he came out, tried to block the cross, missed it. His goal was wide open. He was way off his line there and made the mistake. The second goal, I think we agree, it was definitely his fault. And then on the third goal, I agree he should have come out. Now, Marquinhos did miss the header, But at 6'5", if you're not going to be good with the ball at your feet, you're 6'5". At least come out and claim that ball. Even if you're going to knock over Zaire-Emery, knock him down, but grab the ball first and avoid any danger. He just stands there, very Kevin Trapp-like, and Barcelona score and they take the lead, and that was all she wrote. It's just very disappointing. So I place a lot of the blame on him. There's no games between the previous match and when we play Barcelona again, so there's no chance for Keylor Navas to get warmed up or anything like that. So it's going to be Donnarumma again, and I have to say, whether or not PSG advance might fall on his shoulders. He's been in decent form in terms of shot blocking in Ligue 1. So if he can just not make any stupid mistakes, I like PSG's chances. So we'll have to see how he does there. Are there any positives that you take from this match? We talked a lot of negatives. Anything positive that you liked?
Yeah, definitely. I felt, getting back to Enrique, seeing how quickly he adjusted his mindset tactically right after the halftime whistle, tactical change, and it showed. So I feel like, one, we have a manager in real time, can see what's going on, can read the game, can make the necessary decisions to put us in the right positions. Player-wise, man, what can you say about Vitinha that you haven't already said about our little Portuguese maestro? Marco Verratti and Marquinhos and Ronaldinho are some of my favorite players that have ever played for the club. But Vitinha, after 1.5 seasons, man, he is up there. What a season he's having. So, I just feel like if Vitinha can continue to do what he did in that second leg and the first leg, I feel like we've got a fighter's chance. I feel like Zaire-Emery came on, did what he needed to do. I feel like there was a lot of positives. How many times have we seen in recent years in the QSI era that we go down in a Champions League game against the big club, or any club for that matter, because any team in the Champions League per se is a big club. Doesn't matter if it's Maccabi Haifa or Istanbul Başakşehir. We go down 2-1 and come, or 1-0 and come back 2-1. So I felt like, that response just showed us the change of the mentality that we have this year. So I felt like there's a lot of positive that we saw in the game, and it just showed how easily we can get at them without any doubt in our mind. I feel now that we've got, the players that were not 100% healthy prior to the first match, healthy this match, that we would have the starting 11 that we were all hoping to have. I feel really, really, really content with our chances of going through. I think that the midfield three is going to be a big factor. Honestly, I would rather see Ugarte play because I think we need a little bit more defensive solidity there. And then you want to still see Vitinha going forward, and then Zaire-Emery kind of being all around on that midfield, just that engine in the midfield, just sweeping up, making challenges, bodying
so you
players.
Would play Fabian Ruiz then? He had an assist. Honestly, I thought he played well.
At this point right now, I feel like Fabian didn't have the best game, and I feel like Ugarte might just need we might need a little bit more brass. Okay. That's just my opinion right now. Sure. I think that Gundogan, I think the midfield is still going to be Gundogan, Pedri, and Frenkie de Jong. So I just feel like you might want to have a person that's just going to have to be able to sit between, you would assume Marquinhos and Lucas Hernandez, who's not necessarily going to go forward. And I think that was the biggest thing that we saw in leg one, is that Fabian was a little high up, Kang-In was high up, Vitinha was high up. So when they went through that midfield, there was no midfielder there to protect the defensive line. So I feel like we all know Ugarte's not that player, so he's gonna stay back. Yeah. Warren Zaire-Emery has enough pace to where even if he is a little high up, he can make up the pace because he's got the pace. Same with Vitinha. So I feel like Ugarte might be the defensive solidity that we need. And then in addition, that Hakimi's coming back. Hakimi's coming back. So you have that other player that can help in that transitional counterattacks that we didn't necessarily have in the first leg that we do in the second leg. So I feel like the second leg, we've got it. And Hakimi on top of that. Hakimi is pivotal. He hasn't had the best season, but he hasn't had the worst season. But with him and Dembele's pace outside, out on the width. I don't know how many times I've seen this year of their link up on the touchline, playing it, the center half will play it to Hakimi, Hakimi will play it to Dembele on the touchline, and Dembele will kind of have a hold up play, and Hakimi will have that overlapping run. If we can hit Barcelona on those little link ups and have Gonzalo Ramos coming running in, Mbappe running in, we can so easily get them on counters. So I feel very optimistic. Like you said, if the goalkeeper cleans it up, I feel like we can really have a chance. Barcelona has some cautions. Andreas Christensen is missing that second leg. Yeah. If Marquinhos is playing at center half and if he's man marking Lewandowski, I think that's going to be important, because I even remember reading a quote that I think either it was Marquinhos or Lucas Hernandez said that, Lewandowski had an incredible game, and it just shows that a top-class striker knows the dark arts. He knows how to win those headers, play the ball down, play it out wide, make the turn in, and do what he needs to do. So I think you need to have a top-level center half playing against Lewandowski in the second leg. So I feel like we've got a lot of optimism. Nuno Mendes had a really good match, and he can only continue from there. He even nutmegged Barcelona's defenders when he was in on goal in that final third. I don't know if you remember that. So I feel like we've got a lot of positivity going in. One goal is all we really need to get the game level, and then it's back to 0-0. So I feel pretty confident for the most part. Better than years past going into the second leg for sure.
And I think because we have players that are coming back from injury, they should be in much better fitness than they were in the previous match. We're talking about Zaire-Emery and Bradley Barcola. I think if you can do a front three of Barcola, Mbappe, and Dembele, I absolutely love what those three are going to offer you. We saw how much success Barcola had in the first leg. I wasn't thinking Ugarte, but I like that because he's a player who's very physical. And Barcelona are going to have to go with that midfield that's more attack-minded. And I like that he's able to put in a tackle or, commit a professional foul just to slow them down a little bit. He's going to do that dirty work that PSG did not have a player who would do that in the midfield in the first leg. So I like the idea. And like you said, on the defense, Hakimi coming back, maybe with Dembele and Hakimi with those overlapping runs, that's going to pull some attention away from Mbappe. And if they can do a quick, switch the play, maybe you get Mbappe into a little bit of space, or maybe Vitinha can quickly play a ball into space for him from the middle. So I think it definitely does open up a lot of attacking options for PSG. So like you, I think there's a lot of positives that we could take from the match. Sergio Roberto and Christensen being suspended is going to be massive for Barcelona. They're going to be hanging on. I almost feel like if PSG had won, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, if PSG had won this match 3-2, would you be more nervous than we are now? I almost feel like if we won, I'd be more nervous that something bad is going to happen. Like we wouldn't be able to cling to this lead.
Given recent history, Barcelona 4-0, 2017, Man U, I think it was 2019, 2-0.
Yep.
Madrid 2021, 1-0. It seems like us winning the first leg, and I guess you would say those were all shutouts because the opposition didn't score against us. Yeah. And then going into the second leg, maybe, they're just too lax in the mentality. And, and it's like in a boxing match, when the boxers, you're not awake in the match until you get punched in the mouth. And, we got punched in the mouth 3 times. So I feel like maybe it is good. And then at the same time, you have all those psychological factors of, they're going back to Spain with the lead, blah, 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 blah. Majority of the players that experience those games are no longer with us. So I don't feel like we have that same necessarily like remontada, a team's going to come back against us mentality. But I do feel like the pressure is off of us because we've already lost. So essentially it couldn't get any worse, So I feel like, one, it might have made the players a little angry that we lost at home. We shipped, I would say 2 easy goals. The first goal was kind of tricky, but the other 2, the second and third goals were 2 easy goals where they shouldn't have scored. So I feel like it's gotten under their skin. Lucas Hernandez talked about that. So I feel like, with us losing and going into Spain, I think, like I said, the pressure's off. So, would I would rather us win? Yeah, by all means. But, given recent history, sometimes the lead going into the second leg isn't the best situation. And a good thing is, I didn't bring this up during the Twitter Spaces, that they're not playing in the Camp Nou. They're playing in the Olympic Stadium. So they're not
That's
playing
right.
in their home stadium. So that's just, maybe another psychological factor that might benefit us and may be a detriment to them. I've never been to the Camp Nou, but I know it's a humongous stadium that is rocking.
100,000 or something people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100,000. I've seen a couple Barcelona games this year. I watched the El Clasico at that stadium a few months ago, and it's nowhere near the same level as the Camp Nou. So I just feel like maybe going in the second leg, we've got, a little chip under our shoulder that we got beat at home. We shipped the 2 easy goals. Enrique knows what to do, what not to do now. And I just feel like maybe we've got revenge on our side compared to, I wouldn't say like the games that the other teams came back against us as complacency, but, we lost against Dortmund 2-1 in 2020. We came back and beat them 3-2. We were down at Atalanta, 1-0 pretty much the entire game, and won that game 2-1. So I feel like maybe sometimes being down initially can be a positive. Even in the last game, down 1-0, come back 2-1 in, 5 minutes. So, yeah, I think it could be a positive if we've got the right motivation and the right mindset.
Absolutely. And you give those great examples from seasons past, but let's just look at the last match of the group stage. PSG needed to get a draw. I mean, there was, after Dortmund had scored after halftime, PSG were going to the Europa League, and then it was Warren Zaire-Emery who scored in the 56th minute, just 5 minutes later, to secure that 1-1 draw, and ended up that PSG were able to advance to the knockout stage. So I'm with you. I feel like when PSG have their back up against the wall is when they do better. It's when they win a match and they have this false sense of security. That's when they just completely capitulate, especially on the road, especially in Spain. So yeah, I feel more confident being down a goal than I would if PSG had won that match, as odd as that sounds. And I thought you did a great job explaining that. Got a couple quick topics for you. I asked Dan Hilton from the Barcelona podcast his thoughts on this, and it's about Dembele's goal celebration. We know the unwritten rule, which I personally think is stupid, but about not celebrating against your own team. If you don't want them to score, just stop them. Just any thoughts on Dembele's celebration?
Yeah, I think he was ecstatic because it's been so long since he scored. It's only his second goal of the season. Tons of assists. But I think he erupted because it was an important goal and a goal that he needed to score. I think the last game he scored, I think it was last year, calendar year per se. So I think that he really was excited. I think it meant a lot to him because we all know he's from the Paris suburbs. So I just feel like it just means a lot more to him, and I agree, not celebrating against your former club, it's not a family member. It's your former employer, So given that he's French, given that he's from the region, given that it's a quarterfinal Champions League match and it was the equalizing goal, I just felt like he needed to. The club needed that. The stadium needed that. I'm sure you've been to the Parc des Princes. I've been to the Parc des Princes.
Yeah.
That place is electric. So given that goal was so pivotal, and we all know the history between us and Barcelona, you can't not celebrate that goal. Barcelona,
it was a banger too. I mean, it was a fantastic goal.
Yeah, it was. He roofed it. He absolutely roofed it. And so, given the history between our club and theirs, why not celebrate it? They say enough about our club. All the little internet people want to say enough about our club, and to each his own. But I just feel like it means so much to any given player to score in a Champions League game. It's your divine right to celebrate with your teammates, to bring positivity, to bring the momentum. And it showed right off the bat, right away. A few minutes later, Fabian plays Vitinha in, and we're up 2-1. So I just feel like, they can do whatever they want. I saw some of the videos and their gestures and this, that, and the other. And it just shows you that, like, some people that support certain clubs, it's just blind arrogance. And to me, it's just unintelligent ways of loving football in general. And, if we beat them and put them out, then that's just karma on them. let them do what they do in Catalonia, and we'll do what we need to do in Ile-de-France. And so, Dembele needs to do what he needs to do. We can only hope he gets another one. So, yeah, he deserved to score, celebrate against his former club 100%. And I think Mbappe was really excited as well. I watched that goal a few times, and I think Mbappe was more excited than he was, because I think Mbappe felt like he's been banging in a lot of goals, and he kind of needed some help from his national team strike partner.
Yeah, Mbappe, I think Vitinha's goal as well, he was like screaming. Mbappe was really into it. And I have it on good authority that Dembele does listen to this podcast. So, Usman, if you're out there listening, I think if you do score against Barcelona again in their Renta Stadium, if you could do the Blaise Matuidi celebration that he did against, I think it was Marseille, bring that back. Yeah, bring that goal celebration back. Do it there at that stadium, and let's see what the reaction. That would be great. All right, let's wrap this one up. Let me get a prediction from you. What do you think is going to happen on Tuesday?
Yeah, I think it's going to be another cagey game. I'm hoping that initially our goalkeeper does what he needs to do and just keeps it tight, keeps it safe. And with the changes that we want to see in the attacking line with Barcola coming in, I feel we can put 2 away. Whether we concede one is up in the air, but I feel like we'll put 2 in over there, 2 in, and we're okay. Having a clean sheet away from home, man, that's going to be a tough one. That is going to be a tough one. If we do that, that would be the game of the season thus far at this point. So I'm feeling a 2-1. By all means, regardless if we go in or go out, I'm the kind of person, I hate PKs. I have like extreme levels of anxiety in any PK game, whether it's, a cup game or a World Cup game. I just don't want it to go to PKs. I'd rather it end in 90 and just have the door open and close than go the full amount and then have to go to PKs and then just have like biting my nails off. So I feel like, we'll put 2 goals in. I'm hoping 2-0 victory. To me, it really comes down to the defense. If we can keep it tight at the back, if we can avoid any unnecessary cautions, which would put us under like a possible, red card situation if someone gets an early yellow, whether it's Ugarte or Vitinha or Marquinhos or Hakimi or something like that. I feel like if we can keep the yellow cards under caution, and then if we get an early goal, which I'm hoping is an early goal, that's initially what I'm hoping is we get an early goal in the first 15, keep it tight. It's 3-3 on aggregate. Then second half, we go guns a-blazing, go all out, put another one in, take the attacking line off if we're up 2-0, and you put in Fabian, and you go 4-4-2, 4 midfielders, Mbappe up top, and you say maybe you even pull off Dembele, you even pull off Bradley Barcola, and you put in a more of a defensive player like Kang-In and Kylian Mbappe up top, and you just close it out. Because at this point in the stage of the tournament, you have to be just as aware tactically as you are, mentally. And what I mean by that is that some managers get caught out by trying to continue to score. And I think that's what caught Newcastle out in matchday 6 in the Champions League. And that's one of the reasons why we went through, is that they were up and their manager didn't realize, hey, we don't have to keep going forward. We can shut this down and just and play the safe game. So I feel like if we go up and we're up 4-3 on aggregate, just walk away, live to fight another day. Put on Ugarte, put on Fabian Ruiz, bring in Mukiele, play it safe. And then in addition, on the Barcelona side, I feel like they know what we want to do. I feel like they know that we got punched in the mouth, and they know we're going to come at them. So I feel like they know that they're going to have to accept wave after wave of attack. And I guarantee they're going to try to hit us on the counter. Rafinha is pacey, just as pacey as Dembele and Mbappe are. Maybe he might not be the finisher like Mbappe, but the dude is pacey. João Felix is a damn good player as well. So I feel like Barcelona's strategy is they know we're going to come at them and they're going to try to hit us on the counter. And I think that's the reason why I would rather have Ugarte be there. So you have someone who's just sitting back there waiting for the counters, Marquinhos has pace. Lucas Hernandez is not Milan Skriniar, so we know he's not the fastest person, but he's not like, an ox galloping up and down the field. So I think Barcelona's tactic is set pieces and get us on the counter because, i.e., they don't have to score. The match ends 0-0, they go through. So you know that they're going to accept the defensive work that they're going to have to put in to keep us not from scoring. So I think their tactical mindset is keep it tight, hit them on the counter. Our tactical mindset is get an early goal, keep it tight, get another goal, then play defense. So I'm hoping a 2-goal victory and we go through. We can, put this match behind us. If we don't go through, I'll be content, If you would have told us back in September with the new manager and a ton of new players and losing certain players that I didn't necessarily want to see go, like Marco Verratti, get into the quarterfinals this year with a brand new manager, I'm 100% content. If we win the Coupe de France, great. We haven't won that in 2 years. We win the league for the 12th time now. I'll be happy. But to put Barcelona out I would be more happy putting Barcelona out and losing against Atletico Dortmund than losing against Barcelona and then hearing all the, their fan base and stupid people on Instagram and other stuff. Not that I care about that, but I just have a truly a big passion against Barcelona. 2-0 victory, keep it tight. And, let's hope our Italian goalkeeper can have his mindset in the right place this week.
Boy, do I hope you're right. The way we're going to put this podcast together, I've already given my prediction. People would have already heard it, but I think this one's destined for penalty kicks. And at that point, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm just going to go outside and go for a walk because I just don't think I can actually sit and watch that. It just makes me too nervous. But and maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment, but I think that's where it's going to go. I think where Mbappe may score and it's going to be 1-0 and we're going to go all the way to the penalties. So I hope I'm wrong and I hope you're right. I can't watch that. And, I'm with you on looking at the season as a whole, but the way this whole Champions League draw shaped up, Real Sociedad in the knockout in the round of 16, and then you get a Barcelona side they're talented, but I would think PSG's a little bit further along in their rebuild. We've got Mbappe. Like, PSG are the betting favorite. We should beat them, and to go out to them, especially with all the history, it'd be very disappointing. And if we could just get past Barcelona, you're going to likely face Atletico. They have the lead over Dortmund, but either one of those teams, I still think PSG would be favored. PSG probably wouldn't be favored until they get all the way to the final where they likely play maybe a Manchester City, for example. So it's all shaping up for you to get to the final. You just got to overcome this 3-2 deficit. So I'd be disappointed. I think it'd be a big opportunity wasted. The last season with Mbappe, it'd be really disappointing he goes out with a loss at Barcelona. It'd be really, really disappointing. But if you set that aside, yes, I think you're right. No one really expected this team to get to where they are. I think it's great experience for guys like Zaire-Emery and Barcola and some of our youngsters. Vitinha's progress has been great. There's a lot to be hopeful. We're already seeing, Victor Osimhen is apparently close to signing. So there'll be some big signings this summer. We'll retool, we'll rebuild and add some reinforcements to the defense. So the future certainly is bright, but looking at it right now, we have a great opportunity. Let's grab it. And hopefully we can advance. So I think we're both in agreement. Mine is a little bit more painful, but we think PSG will advance. We'll have to see what happens. Drew, any final thoughts before we let you run?
Yeah, like I said, this is the year that we can maybe seize the opportunity. We got on the favorable side of the quarterfinal draw. So, do I fancy us against Atletico more than Barcelona? Honestly, I do. Everybody knows Atleti is a very pragmatic team. So, if we could just get through this round, the door is open to get to the final. Win or lose, if we got to the final, that I'd be ecstatic. I would be truly, truly ecstatic. So, that beyond that, let's just hope that this game we show the true grit and the true Parisian fighter mentality that we know the team has, and get one up on them and go on through the next round. And make all of our Parisian supporters all across the world have a big smile on Wednesday or Tuesday afternoon. Excuse me. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I would certainly be celebrating, and let's not count out Dortmund in that Atletico Dortmund tie. They're going to Dortmund for the return leg. Dortmund are down a goal. I think they're going to like their chances, and if it's them in the next round of PSG, we're fortunate enough to advance. We know we can beat Dortmund. We've already done it this season. We've done it in seasons past. So, like you said, we're on the right side of the draw. We need Mbappe. We need Mbappe to lead us, get some goals, and lead us through to the next round. Keep this magical season going. It's been a lot of fun, especially after the last season under Gaultier and then Pochettino. We've had some really bad years where it's bad results and bad football, and it's been tough to be a PSG supporter. And there's finally some excitement, things to look forward to, and I don't want it to end. And it wouldn't. We still have the Coupe de France final. We still have a trophy, a Ligue 1 title to celebrate. So there will be some excitement, but I just want to keep this Champions League run going. So, well, Drew, we're going to let you run. Thanks so much for coming on. And thank you, everyone out there, for listening to the PSG Talking podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and subscribe and leave us a review if you can. Always appreciate that. And until next time, bye, everyone.